Germany shouldn't be rich. Aside from quite a dark past, the nation also lacks vital natural resources, it has a below-average geographic position, and a very old population that is about to collapse. But regardless, it somehow managed to become an economic superpower. The undeniable leader of Europe and its multinational brands are some of the most widely recognized brands on the planet. But why? How did Germany go from starvation and hyperinflation to an economic superpower, and then back to economic deprivation, and once again back to an economic superpower, and why the latest economic collapse happening in Germany right now might be the last time Germany is a powerful nation for generations? Obviously, when discussing Germany's history, we can't overlook the man with the funny mustache and the pointless war he started. Germany during World War II wasn't an innocent bystander, but alongside Japan and maybe Italy, they were the main perpetrators of the war. While all the Allies agreed upon that fact, they disagreed on how to punish them. The Soviets basically collapsed their economy, sent everyone they didn't like to a Siberian gulag, and built a wall around Berlin so no one could leave. While the West understood that the main reason for the war was the humiliating treatment of Germany after the First War and the economic crisis in the nation. So to avoid a third conflict and also to have an extra powerful ally against the Soviets, they decided to help the Germans rebuild their economies. And obviously, this is the part where the story of Germany splits in two parts. On one side of the border, West Germany, which was supported by the Americans and Western Europe, was flourishing economically. During this period, Germany built up the massive brands and companies we know and love today, which slowly turned them once again into one of the most powerful economies on the planet. In fact, they grew so much, just West Germany by itself rivaled the entire size of the Soviet economy. But the story for East Germany was quite a bit different. While the nation was the richest region inside of the Eastern Bloc, being the richest one in a collection of failed states isn't all that much of an achievement. For comparison, Greece and Portugal, two of the most problematic states of the Western Bloc, consistently outperformed East Germany in economic productivity for the majority of the Cold War. But just like everything in life, things must always come to an end. In the early 90s, the Soviet Union collapsed, and Germany began the long and painful process of reunification. The two nations basically had nothing in common, from basic things like electricity grids and public transportation, to more fundamental realities like religion, culture, and economic productivity. It's basically like taking an impoverished North Korean villager that barely knows what electricity is, and throwing him in the center of Seoul. His brain would quite literally explode from overstimulation. And it's not like those issues were solved decades ago. The difference between the two Germanys still persists to this day. For example, these are the recent German election results. Can you see a pattern? It's like reunification never even happened. What is surprising about Germany is how export-oriented their economy is. Even much larger nations like America and China barely outcompete the Germans. But it's worth noting that much of this trade takes place within the European Union, and calling it international trade while both sides use the same currency and have the same borders is kind of like cheating. The thing about manufacturing is that it's extremely energy dependent, and if you haven't been living under a rock for the past few years, you know they have had a few disagreements with their largest energy supplier, which has exploded the price of energy to a ridiculously high level, and German industry is suffering because of that. But another problem is damaging the economy to an even greater degree, and if it goes unsolved, it might lead to the complete breakdown of the German state. And obviously, I am talking about their fertility crisis. While not unique to Germany, it's especially bad in the nation. For decades now, the fertility rate has been under replacement levels, and it doesn't take a demographic expert to realize their population pyramid doesn't look all that much like a pyramid, which effectively means every year the number of working age people is dropping, while the number of senior citizens that depend on the state for welfare is increasing, which places immense amounts of economic pressure on the younger generations. And it's only a matter of time before the entire system crumbles under its own weight. For the longest time, politicians have tried to combat this issue by importing millions upon millions of immigrants from third world countries. But as fertility rates also start to drastically fall in those third world nations, and as this method of increasing the populations becomes more and more politically unpopular, Germany will have no other option than to increase the fertility rate of its own citizens. But let's be honest, while indeed those challenges pose a massive threat to Germany, and failing to address them might lead to complete and utter economic collapse, we have to acknowledge that Germany still is an absolute economic juggernaut. Just last year, they passed Japan and became the world's third largest economy. Though to be fair, Japan wasn't doing all that well economically in the first place. In fact, the two nations seem to be facing pretty much the same issues. If you want to see how Japan is dealing with their problems, and if they can retake third in the rankings of the world's largest economies, click here and subscribe. Anyway, have a great rest of your day.